I'm now going to prepare a Navarin of lamb. Now, a Navarin is a type of stew. It's a brown stew, and to make this particular stew, we're going to use the neck fillet of lamb. So this is a whole neck of lamb, so you can see it like so. And to produce this dish, we are taking off the fillets. So if you can see the two eyes of meat there, and then what we do is cut down this central bone here to remove a fillet like so. So on this tray, my next tray here, I have two of the fillets as removed from the neck, and then we've trimmed them down to make sure that all the fats and gristle has been removed, and then we've cut that into nice sized chunks which we're going to use to make this stew. So this cubed meat has come from the neck fillet, and that was just a quick example of how we got there. So before I start to go through the rest of the ingredients, I'm just going to give my hands a rinse. So as well as the lamb, which we've diced up into fairly even sizes, and here we have about 600 grams, so that will make 4 150 gram portions. Other flavourings that we need include what we refer to as a mirepoix. Now, mirepoix is a roughly cut root vegetable including onion, celery, carrots and leek. Now, these 4 vegetables are cut into pretty even sizes, but fairly roughly. They're not going to be actually served as part of the dish. They're just going to infuse in the stew as the dish is cooked. Other ingredients, we have some flour, which will act as a thickening agent, some brown stock, which is a brown lamb stock, a little bit of garlic, and some tomato puree. I've also got some garnishes which will form part of the stew and be served, of some turned potatoes and some turned carrots. And these are turned into a little barrel shape, like so. So they'll be used later on. So to get this going, first of all, I'm going to sear the meat. So I want to get a nice caramelisation going on the surface of the meat. Right, so we're going to start by searing the lamb. So the pan's nice and hot. We'll keep this moving around the pan. We'll leave this for a second, just so that we get some caramelisation on the surface of the meat, and then we'll turn it round so that there's a sear on all sides of the meat. We'll just give that a little turn now. So at this stage we really want the meat to sear, we don't want it to boil, so we need to use a high temperature so that we really get a good colouring on the outside of each piece of meat. So we need to make sure that the meat is spread across the whole surface of the pan so that it has a direct contact with the base of the pan. And we don't want to move it too much at the early stages, because what we're trying to do is create a sear on the surface of the meat like this, so that produces the caramelisation and that Maillard reaction to give us the beautiful meaty aromas. And then just gently turn them over so that each side of the meat gets the same searing. So now the lamb is nicely seared, we're going to add our mirepoix of vegetables. So they can all go in. And we're also going to get some colour on the vegetables as well. So we need to give these a good stir around, and they'll start to soak up some of that meaty flavour and also caramelise themselves. And at this stage I can also add a clove of crushed garlic. And just start to turn the temperature down now. So now that the vegetables have had a few minutes to colour, we're going to add our flour. And just give this a light covering, because this will form the starch to help thicken the sauce. So we'll just give this a good stir around so that everything's got a little covering. We can add our tomato puree. And we can begin to add the stock. So I'm going to start with a little bit of stock. Gently stir this in. This will release the flour and the fat, which has turned into a paste and surrounded the vegetables and the meat, and this will start now to form the basis for the sauce. Add some more. So the sauce is naturally now coating the meat and the vegetables, and this, once I'm happy with the consistency, this is still a little bit thick, but you can see that the sauce is surrounding the meat and vegetables. There's no lumps in there because the flour and the fat have formed a paste to mix with the stock to form the sauce. And then we'll add a little bit more stock. Just bring this up to a nice gentle simmer. And this is now ready to stew because the sauce is at a nice consistency, a good consistency, just coating, but not too thick, not too thin, just coating the meat and the vegetables. So we'll reduce the heat, make sure that we're only simmering at this stage. Have a bouquet garni, which we can drop in to infuse. The bouquet garni is our little herb packet made with thyme, rosemary, bay leaf, parsley stalks, peppercorns in muslin. And now we're ready to let this simmer. This will simmer and stew for about 2 hours, but we can check. So we really want the meat to be nice and tender. So we're going to place our lid on, check every 10 to 15 minutes, make sure that nothing's sticking to the bottom of the pan. So for 600 grams of meat and those vegetables, I've used approximately 800 millilitres of stock. So we'll just leave that safely to cook out for approximately 2 hours. So 2 hours have passed now, and the stew has been gently simmering away. So it's time to check, to make sure that the meat is nice and tender. So we can just check using a little knife. So that's now starting to just come away quite nicely now. So I know it's nice and tender. So to finish the dish, we've just blanched off some turned carrots and potato, and I'm now going to, using my tongs, I'm going to go through the stew and place the cooked meat into a fresh pan. Once I've done this, because I said we're not going to use the mirepoix of vegetables because they've just been there for flavour, I'm going to remove the bouquet garni and then pass the sauce through a chinois, a conical strainer, onto the stewed meat. And we're going to strain the sauce on top of the meat. cloth. Because I've only got a fairly small amount, I'm able to lift the pan. If it was bigger, I would use a ladle. And we'll just pass this, giving it a good tap to get all of the sauce from the vegetables. We'll give them a light squeeze to ensure we get as much flavour out as we possibly can. So now the sauce is back on top of the meat. I'm just going to reheat this. So place it onto the induction. And we'll just bring this back up to a gentle simmer. So just as the sauce is reheating, because my vegetables are blanched, as in they've been pre-cooked, I can just drop them into the just under boiling liquid, and the liquid will help to heat these through. So we can just drop these turned vegetables into the liquid. So at this point we also want to check for seasoning. So we can taste the sauce to make sure the seasoning is good. It's got a nice sheen to the sauce, which is a positive sign. And we're ready to serve. So we'll use a warm bowl on this occasion, a warmed bowl. Just need to ensure that we have a nice balance of the vegetables and the meat, so we can make sure we have a few veg scattered around as well. A good coverage of the sauce. Ensure that the plate's nice and clean before serving. And just for a little earthiness and a lighten, we can just sprinkle with a little bit of parsley. And there we have a Navarin of lamb, cooked using the middle neck fillet. And this is served with some turned new potatoes and carrots.